Welcome back, friends. Tonight is Thursday night, and you know what time that is for. It is for the Author's Dilemma Show, where we come to you weekly and we talk about the author career, or our author's career. And tonight, and we're having trouble streaming, so we'll see how this works. Anyway, doesn't matter. We'll keep going. So tonight we have a special guest. We have Anna Bartolucci. And but first, let's introduce ourselves. My name is J.E. Jack. I write urban fantasy, horror, and paranormal thrillers.
I'm Hyrum Hawks, and I write hard sci-fi and sci-fantasy.
I'm Jennifer Carr, and I write clean contemporary romance and Christian romantic suspense.
And we have a special guest.
Oh, I get to talk now. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi. Well, as Cecilia Dominic, I write urban fantasy and steampunk, and as Anna Bartolucci, I write nonfiction.
Nice.
Perfect. So actually, this is part of the show where we can kind of gloss over that because we talk about ourselves every week, so we can just kind of move past that. What is there anything in the author world that we need to know about? Anybody got any news this week?
I mean,
I could not find anything interesting.
Aside from Suzanne Collins' new Hunger Games prequel that I am super excited about coming out next year, no, there was absolutely no news in my opinion other than that.
All right, well, moving on. Well, so much for that conversation. No. So tonight we have an awesome guest. I'm so glad that we were able to get her on our show. She has actually, Jen, you know her better than I do. I mean, you've talked to her more, and why don't you go ahead and introduce her?
Yeah, so
No
Anna
pressure.
and I, no pressure. Anna and I met through another friend of mine and a mutual acquaintance that we have who she was a guest on my podcast last season. Elisa, sorry. And we just kind of hung out over a call, and I was like, hey, let's get to know you because my podcast was booked. And I was like, I want to talk about you. I want to talk to you. And I know a group of authors who would love to talk to you, and I'm one of them. And so we just kind of had a conversation to get to know her, and I thought, yeah, she's going to be a perfect fit for this show because she's an author who has experience in some small press publishing, and she's been doing it for a hot minute. And then she's also kind of transitioning from writing to writing coach and kind of putting that in as part of her career on top of her psychology career, which, we were just meant to have this conversation because we have so much in common anyway. So I'm really excited she's here, and thank you for taking this time to hang out with us.
And first off, for those of you that are not with us live this evening, she has a partner with her that you can probably hear. Her
Yes,
cat.
he is. Yes, this is my supervisor, Timothy Mouse, and he has opinions.
We're here for it.
Yes, and we like that.
He has the perfect opinion.
So, Anna, tell us about how did you get started? Tell us your story.
So yes, once upon a time. Okay, so the way back story is apparently I wrote my first story when I was 2.
Oh, wow.
According to my mother, while it lacked something in plot and character development, apparently it more than made up for it in enthusiasm. I think it was about a bunny.
Mm-hmm.
Please keep in mind, I have not actually seen proof that this happened. But, we can go with it. I do remember always writing stories as far back as I can remember. And then, I hit school age and what do you want to be when you grow up? And of course, writer wasn't really an option because, it was hard to make money as a writer, theoretically. Mm-hmm. And then I got to grad school and I had pretty much put aside the fun writing and got into scientific writing, which is all, boring, very objective, very passive voice. Just, oh my gosh, no wonder nobody reads science. Mm-hmm. And
Hyrum does.
Hyrum does,
yeah. So Hyrum knows exactly what I mean. Yeah. So then I hit a little bit of a speed bump, and I did what, a lot of healthy people do when they hit speed bumps, which is to go shopping. Mm-hmm. And I was a poor grad student at the time, so clothes were a little expensive, so I went to the bookstore. And somehow I ended up in the magazine section, and I saw Writer's Digest, and I picked it up, and I was like, can I curse on the show or not? Are we family friendly?
It's live. We don't know what that will happen. Yeah.
Okay. So I picked up Writer's Digest, just looked at it and said, holy sheet. People get
Yeah.
paid to write.
Yeah.
It's not just a line on your CV. People
Yeah.
actually get paid to do this.
Mhm.
So that's when I got right back into writing short stories. And it took me a while to get published. I guess my first big, so that was back in, 2000, 2001. Started working on my first novel in like 2003-ish. And, won a short story contest in 2010. And then 2014, I got my first book contract. So, it was a while of, seriously pursuing it before I didn't get the call. Apparently the call stopped. It's like I got the email.
Oh.
Oh.
Yes.
You say you started in 2003 earnestly, right? Okay, so in 2003 and then in 2014 was your first time you actually got traditionally published, right? Or they're called to get traditionally published. And so when you started in 2014, what was that process like? Like how long between you getting the email and it finally getting released?
I was fortunate to be with Samhain Publishing,
Okay.
which was a medium-sized genre, mostly romance publisher out of Cincinnati, Ohio. However, they were very well known in the romance circles. And they actually had a really nice quick turnaround. Like I got my book contract in January and the book came out in October.
Okay.
And and they were then I had 7 books with them total, and their process was if you're writing books in a series, they want the next one out within 4 to 6 months. And so, luckily I write fast.
Well, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because what?
Yeah.
Because what?
So what is so you've obviously written several books. Actually, how many do you have in your library right now?
20 plus fiction, so 17 novels, 4 novellas, and 2 nonfiction. And when I got published in 2014, I had already written 4. And I had kept going back and revising that first one. So my story's a little unusual in that it was my first novel that got published, but it was my first novel muchly revised.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first book contract. That was the Wolf Shadow, which is behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Originally published as The Mountain Shadow. And then, sorry, what was the question? You asked how many.
Well, no, I mean, how many books do you have in your library? But really, the main question is like when your writing process, what does your writing process look like? Do you outline? Do you pants? And then also the follow up question to that would be, what do you do? Do you write once a week, every day? Just tell us a little bit about that.
I'm a writer in spurts. And so when I'm really focused on writing, I'm writing almost every day.
Mm-hmm.
I write in sprints, so 30-minute sprints. But then when I'm not writing, I'm really not writing. So, that's when I'm focusing on editing or marketing. And I wish I could say that I have a regular rhythm, but I don't really.
Hey, you fit right in here. So
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yes. What do I feel like today?
Schedule.
Yeah, I would like to get into a rhythm, and I will because I have some plans coming up. Like right now, I'm working on the 3rd book for my contract with Falstaff Publishing, which is a teeny tiny publisher out of North Carolina. It's actually my first fiction traditional contract since leaving Samhain, so I pretty much continued on my own.
Okay, so when did you leave? Okay, so you started traditional in 2014, and then at some point did you go indie or?
Well, Samhain shut down in 2016.
2017.
Oh, 2017. Okay,
2017.
I missed that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I pretty much had to go on my own at that point. But I feel really fortunate that I had the experience because I knew what it took to get a book out. I knew the level of editing that was required. And I am super, super fortunate that I have kept Holly Atkinson, my Samhain editor. She now freelances.
Oh, perfect.
So she's done all my fiction.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. She knows my world. She knows my characters.
Your
she knows
voice,
my process.
yeah.
Yeah, she's great.
Oh, that's awesome. So what are, in your experience, or what did you like most about traditional versus indie? And then what do you like most about indie versus traditional? Or what have you learned? Like, what are lessons learned you've learned in both worlds?
Yes. So what I liked about traditional was being able to finish the manuscript, hand it off, and then it mostly not worry about it until it was closer to coming out. They send it back they do edits, they send it back. I did my thing, I send it back to them, back and forth. Hey, what do you want the cover to look like? Hey, what do you want the blurb to be? Or, hey, does this blurb sound good? I didn't have to think about that. So if you are more of a delegating personality, and this is the thing, one of the things that I teach in my Start Your Book Challenge, which is if you're thinking about publishing path, think about your personality, what you prefer, what degree of control do you prefer? So that is the thing that I don't like about being traditionally published, is the lack of control, of control over the timeline. The fact that when I was with Samhain, if somebody was running a sale or there was going to be like a group promo, I had to submit a request for them to drop my book's price. And sometimes they said yes, sometimes they said no. If covers don't work with traditional publishing, well, you're just kind of SOL,
Right.
They're not going to just give you another one. And I've got a couple of friends who've gotten in pickles with traditional publishing because they either haven't been able to get their rights back after the book hasn't been selling. That's another thing I teach, is like, make sure there's always an out clause. I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you there needs to be an out clause. Yeah. And also, when it comes to contracts, make sure that there's not that right of first refusal clause as well, or make sure that you have a way around it. Like with Falstaff, my right of first refusal clause, which I know there's another name for it, Alyssa could tell us, is very specific to time travel, fantasy, romance. So the rest of my books I'm fine, just that specific genre, they need to, if I'm going to do another one, they need to see it.
Okay, so you write romance, steampunk, and urban fantasy. What did you start off with first? You started off with steampunk or urban fantasy?
Urban fantasy.
Okay.
So werewolf medical thrillers.
That's interesting. I'm writing a urban fantasy about a werewolf right now. So
nice.
Actually, I finished it. It's going through the editing process, but that's interesting.
That's awesome.
So you got that. When did you get into the steampunk? Or what made you decide to jump from urban fantasy to steampunk and then to romance? If you don't,
Oh yeah. So romance has been, I do write, like, all my books have romantic elements in them, and they're all essentially mysteries with romantic elements. It's just the overarching umbrella that changes. I only actually have one romance, and that's the one called A Perfect Man. And I really don't market it. It's out there, you can find it, but I really don't market it. It's a different voice for me. And that was when I got about 40,000 words in. It's like, well, nothing weird's happened, so I guess this one's a contemporary. Yeah.
That's her blue period. That's the Picasso blue period.
Exactly.
We don't talk about that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So
yeah. So then how I got into steampunk. Sorry, I keep talking around your question.
No, you're good.
It's like I'm a
This
psychologist.
is a conversation. This is a give and take.
Yeah.
And please, Hyrum and Jen, if you have questions, please jump in. I feel like I'm hogging the conversation.
You're good.
So,
You're good.
Moving on.
A friend of mine he and another friend of his were putting together a short story anthology of steampunk fairy tale romance retellings, or fairy tale retellings. They're really not into romance. And so he asked me to contribute. He said, I think this will be a great fit for you. There's overlap in readers. And I was like, cool, what's steampunk? And so I did my homework. I got the steampunk Bible. I read a few of the books, got a little horrified that all of the heroes seemed to have repeated head injuries through all of the early ones. And you can't turn off the psychologist brain. And I submitted the story and they rejected it. Yes, it happens. Just because you're invited doesn't mean, even though it was a really good story. But I was like, you know what? I really like steampunk. And Samhain had said no to more books in the Lycanthropy Files. They weren't interested in my other urban fantasy series. So I said, what the heck? I'm going to write a steampunk. And that was in 2014. My beloved tuxedo cat Bailey had passed on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And thank you. Yes, he was my heart cat. I still have pictures of him in my office that my sister took. And
very smart.
I was
They
Yes,
are smart.
he was very smart. He was also so sweet.
Mhm.
And I decided to memorialize him. So the hero of that book is Edward Bailey.
Mhm.
Edward
Oh.
is rather finicky. And yeah, I don't write alpha heroes. They're kind of beta intellectuals, most of them. And that was basically when Eros Element was born. And Samhain took the first 3 in that series. And the third book in that series is actually an expansion of the short story that had gotten rejected. So it was
Wiener,
Sleeping
wiener.
Beauty, but with yeah, exactly. I have more book contracts than the one who invited and rejected me. So
I mean, not that we're petty, but
Yeah.
not to be
I am.
petty. Yeah,
Well,
just a little.
But then it also goes to show that no matter what you write or no matter what you work on, you can always use it later too.
Oh
And
yeah.
so
Exactly.
that's what's not good for one person doesn't mean it's not good for someone else. So that's a really
And if
good.
you get big enough, you can do like Brandon Sanderson and just start selling your stuff that isn't worth publishing as novelties. People will be like, sure.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll
not-
take
I'm-
that
I-
twice.
yeah.
The model that I want to see if I could duplicate, and I don't know how, would be the Anne McCaffrey Dragon Riders of Pern series, where she basically told the same story from like 7 or 8 different angles. And I don't care. I read every single one of them and I
Right.
loved them. Yes.
Well, wasn't that Louis L'Amour with Westerns? They were all the same, and then he started doing pirate
No.
versions.
No, they weren't the same. They were. I mean, they followed a family, but it was different stories.
Oh, I think he wrote like dozens of different series. And when I read the ones about, anyway, that's
Yeah.
he was prolific. That's really what I think.
No, he
all
was
of
very
us want to
prolific. I
be,
mean-
is prolific.
And the reason why I know about him is because my dad read a lot of his stuff. So,
Oh.
and that's kind of got me reading Lou L'Amour as well. So I can talk to you about him.
Yeah, and that's also a great example of branding, because you say
Right.
Louis L'Amour and everybody pictures
Everybody
those
knows.
covers and that
Mhm.
font.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
That's true.
Well, that also kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about what is your image, right? Do you want to be a delegator? Like that all kind of
Hmm.
wraps up into your brand. So going back to when did you start getting into? We talked about your your fiction, excuse me. When did you start writing nonfiction, and how is that process different? I mean, I'm sure it's a lot different because it requires a lot more research or knowledge, and then also like footnotes.
Yeah, and and when you get stuck, you can't kill anybody off.
That's right.
Police
That's
don't
right.
like that.
Yes, it's an autobiography.
Yes.
Yeah. Geez, that took a dark turn.
She's a psychologist, Hyrum.
Yeah.
That's okay. I don't work for free.
No, it's more of judgment, but it's okay. It's probably already happened. So. It's
Yeah.
fine.
So it's fine. Yeah, so I got into nonfiction first with Business Basics for Private Practice, a guide for mental health professionals. And I wrote that one because anytime I would bring on a contractor in my practice, they would, of course, have a ton of questions because, they don't teach us about business in
Mhm.
psychology school.
Mhm.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, or, in pretty much any other school where you need
Or anything
business
really. They don't talk to you
knowledge.
about how
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have that training. And of course, people come in with a ton of questions. And so essentially I wrote that book because I wanted to have something to give to new hires to say, here, please read this and then ask me questions. And it's worked great.
That's
Mhm.
smart.
And I was fortunate that I was at a convention in, I want to say it was about 2017. And the young woman who was at the Rutledge table was actually an acquiring editor. And so I pitched the book to her. She said, yeah, that sounds great. Send me a proposal. So I did, and they took it. And honestly, that is the only book I've ever gotten an advance for.
Wow.
was- Yeah. And so that one came out in 2019. And then sort of a similar process happened with Better Sleep for the Overachiever. It's that, at that point I started my practice in 2008, and I had noticed this certain personality type that I kept seeing, the kind of type A, even if they weren't type A, very highly motivated, highly driven. And so I noticed there was a pattern to the conversation. I noticed there was a pattern to the sleep problem, and they needed more than just the usual sleep recommendations and advice. So Better Sleep for the Overachiever is really more about there's a one chapter on the sleep advice, but also, okay, the other things that contribute to sleeplessness, like procrastination, which is the last chapter for a reason, and overcoming failure or perceived failure, and write what you know. So that was also a book that allowed me to work through some of my own personal frustrations as well. And that one, I admit I could have done a lot better for the launch, but what happened was, of course, 2020 happened, and I needed to get something quickly into the hands of my referral sources because we were getting, of course, flooded with people with sleep problems. And so I needed to have something that they could recommend to patients while they were waiting to get in with us, or to give them some skills to try.
So going back to, your college, what made you decide to go down that route?
Oh, the psychology route, or
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. I mean, because
Okay.
We've kind of alluded to it. You went to school, and then we jumped to. I mean, you have PhD. You're a doctor. That's fantastic. I mean, that's amazing. Which congratulations. I mean, that's not an
Thank
easy
you.
task. But going back to, I mean, this is outside because here not only do we talk about the writing, but we also talk about the whole person. Because we all, like you said, write about what you know, and I think it's important because we all bring what our whole lives to our writing.
Work. Yeah.
Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about that pathway. You I love your cat.
It's so fun.
What he's really saying is, Dad ate dinner. Why am I not getting my wet food right now?
I'm on a schedule, woman.
You're talking to these moving images on the screen over here. I don't get it.
Excuse me. It's like, let me text my husband. Please give cat food. Oh, actually, he's going to have to come in here twice for it. So, okay, we'll feed you afterwards. I promise. Well, I started off, so I never thought I would be a psychologist. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. I always thought I was going to be a marine biologist. But then
Me
I started...
too, until I went to the ocean.
Yeah, there's scary
joking,
things in there.
Well, it smelled bad. I was bad.
Yeah, depending where you are. Yeah. Well, in my case, it was, red hair, freckles, pale skin, marine biologist.
You would
spent
have
a lot of
been
time
torched.
outside. I would have. I would have been very pink constantly. So I decided, okay, well, let's go a different direction. So I started off college as a math and music major. I was going to do piano performance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. However, I have a flat, bony derriere, and there was one practice room that had a padded bench at my college. One. And of course, everybody tried to sign up for it because, it sounds like being a musician is very glamorous with the things you think about it. No, it's like, who's got the padded bench? So that major didn't last very long.
It's amazing how little things like that can change your life.
Your whole trajectory.
I'm going to do this. No, I'm going to do this.
No, like if all of the benches had been padded, maybe I would be a concert pianist. Who knows?
Oh, that's awesome. So then...
But then I took an interdisciplinary class that was basically philosophy, psychology, English literature, some history. It was the history of love, actually. And it was so fascinating. And that's when I fell in love with psychology. And I decided that people problems were more interesting than number problems. And so while Hyrum disagrees. So that's okay. Yeah, that's okay. So while I did graduate with degrees in math and psychology, I went on to graduate school in clinical psychology, and originally was doing alcohol and aggression research, which meant I got to shock people, which was fun. But then
maybe I should go into that.
Yeah.
If it involves shocking people.
I do this for fun.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is so that I say that my dissertation was an animal study because we used undergraduate males.
Well,
I resemble that statement.
Here.
No. Yeah, it's funny when I give a talk and I use that line. I can always tell who are the parents of college-age boys because people look shocked and they're like, "Oh, yeah."
I have 3 college-age sons. So
you get it.
Can we sign them up? No.
No, that was a long, long time ago.
So then you became a doctor, and
Then
is
I
that,
yes, then
yeah.
I got my PhD, and I started off as the clinical director of a sleep disorder center for a few years. Yeah, I kind of, no pun intended, fell into sleep sort of accidentally. I was trying to get more experience outside our little psychology clinic, and so I emailed around to alums of the program in the Atlanta area. I was in Athens, so it was an easy drive, and plus my boyfriend at the time, now husband, lives in Atlanta, and so one of them who responded was Michael Bruce, and he has since gone on to become famous as America's sleep doctor.
Oh.
He was a great early mentor and still a friend. And when he was getting ready to go out west to seek his fame and fortune, I slotted right into his job. And then a few years later, I started my practice because, again, control freak.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yes.
So I have a question for all psychologists, and you can ignore me because it might be an offensive question, but I've already asked it to Jen. Anyone who goes in psychology, I always ask, did you go into it partly to fix your own problems, or were you just interested in other people's? Because I'd say half the psychologists say, oh, I was definitely trying to figure out my own problems too.
I would say mostly other people's, but I'll be honest and say there's a little, I mean, you can't help but be curious about yourself as well when you're in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And psychologists, like psychology students, a lot of us do go through the medical school syndrome thing where it's like everything you study, you're like, oh gosh, do I have that? Do I have that? Yeah.
That seems universal.
Oh, yeah.
I have taught my children from an early age that if they Google a symptom, they have cancer.
That's it.
Yes.
Because every symptom is of cancer.
Yes.
So after you became a doctor and then you started writing and things of that nature, you also became a book coach, right?
Yes.
So tell us about that process. How did you get involved in that?
Accidentally.
Okay.
Yes. In 2020, my friend Rebecca Beaton, who owns The Knowledge Tree, which is a continuing education platform for mental health professionals, not just psychologists, like everybody, was expanding their offerings. And of course, they were shifting everything to online. And so she asked me, what do you want to teach? Because I'd already been teaching an insomnia treatment workshop for them. And it had gone over well. And I had actually discovered that I like teaching, which was cool. So I told her, well, I write steampunk and I'm a medical history geek. So let me do a workshop on hysteria and the occult in Victorian times. And I'll cover that. Yeah, it's fine. I know I need to record it for myself and sell it because I think people.
Yes, I would buy that.
That's interesting.
Okay, I'll let you know when I do it. So basically covering that period of the history of psychology between the age of rationalism and Freud, because it's kind of like, when you're in a history of psychology class, it's like philosopher, Freud, and they kind of skip the stuff in the middle. They might say a little bit about asylums, but that's all you get. And we really don't learn about the early connections of psychology with spiritualism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, let me teach that, and we'll do it in October and make it kind of a Halloween thing. It'll be cool. And she said, okay, yeah. And how about how to write a book? And I said, oh, yeah, I could teach that too. And so out of that.
How do those connect?
They don't.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think she was really wanting me to come up with let me teach a workshop on how to write a book. And so I ended up teaching that workshop a few times for them. And out of that came some people who wanted some extra help. So great, started some consultation groups. And then out of that came co-writing sessions, which people absolutely love. And then out of that came doing workshops. And along the way, I got a couple of people who wanted to work with me individually. And so it grew into Psych Up Academy, which is online courses, coaching, and community for aspiring authors, and mostly nonfiction, although I do have a couple of fiction people in there every once in a while as well.
So how does the coaching process work when it comes to books? Like, how? Explain that, if you don't mind.
I believe everybody does it a little bit differently. But I think we all follow the general coaching thing, which is like, okay, let's talk about your goals. Let's set the goals. Let's see what's getting in the way of the goals. It's sort of like cognitive behavioral therapy light. Like, in coaching, you don't talk about people's people's deep-seated problems.
Mm-hmm.
Although some of the
But they're
stuff
there.
does,
Yeah.
but they are there and they come up.
It bubbles.
It's like an
And
accountability
so-
partner. Like, hey, do
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Let's ask
Yeah,
questions in a way that you can learn this for yourself.
yes. Yeah, so it's essentially guiding people to figure out their own writing process, or that's how I do it. Like, other people have a very set process and program. I was diagnosed with ADHD a few years ago, and it was a huge revelation because I realized that I didn't have the tools I thought I did. I didn't need the tools I thought I needed. And so that's why other people's formats, systems, etc., weren't working for me. And so that was a huge revelation. It's like, oh, every brain is different. Brains are weird. Let me help people figure out how to work with theirs in order to write their books. And so when I coach, it's a very fluid process. Yeah, there are things that I do recommend that everybody do, but it's essentially about helping people figure out their own process and then figure out the flexibility within the process. Because I can tell you, even though I've written 20 plus books, the process for each was a little bit different.
That's true. So have you
Yes.
found any themes that are absolutely universal in the writing coaching that people always struggle with? Or is it pretty much that we're so, the Gaussian is so wide that we all seem to have our own unique problems?
There are a few universals. I would say that imposter syndrome is definitely one of them. People are afraid that nobody's going to want to read what they have to say, that their ideas aren't original enough, that they're accidentally going to copy or plagiarize someone. That one came up a lot, especially after the whole Harvard president thing.
By the way,
Oh,
for
yeah,
those
that
of you
was-
that are watching this, we're all shaking our head yes at each one of these things.
Yes.
Universal.
Universal. That's true.
Yes. And so it's helping people to get past those. And one of the things I tell them is like, okay, how many books in your favorite genre or subgenre do you have on your shelf or in your virtual bookshelf? Probably more than one, probably more than 10.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And while they all have similarities, the reason that you have so many is because each author brings their own unique life experience and perspective to them.
Yep.
So it's figuring out what yours is. And a lot of times people don't even realize what theirs is until they start writing.
That's true.
That's actually something that we've talked about a fair amount, is that just because there's The Martian out there, I'm a big hard sci-fi buff, doesn't mean that I don't also read the books by other hard sci-fi authors. Andy Weir doesn't get all my reading. He can't write enough to keep up with me, even though I don't have enough time. And
Yep.
so we're not authors aren't competing with each other. So that's been one of our big themes in this group is we're allies, because
Yeah.
I mean, heck, I read Josh's first book, I read Jen's first book, and they're not in my normal genre, and I'm like, why? These are really good. Maybe I should read more genres. And so we love that, like, that sometimes your book might be what brings someone into your genre.
That's true.
Exactly.
So where can we find you? Like what do you got going on now? Like what is your next big project, and what else are
Feeding the cat.
you got going on?
Sorry, what was that, Hyrum?
What do you
Yes, feed the cat.
After you feed the cat.
Feed the cat, yes, yes. Not save the cat.
Not Save the
But-
Cat. That's a different book.
That's a different
Yes. Yeah, he doesn't need saving, he just needs food. Because as you can see, he is wasting away to nothing.
He would beg to differ. Yeah.
Yes. I am currently working really hard on building up Psych Up Academy so that I can have some more people coming into the membership so that I can have more time for my writing. So it is that is the end goal, is for me to have more time for my writing. I am currently working on the third book for the fall staff contract because it's a very fluid deadline, but I really need to get it done. And it's going a little bit more slowly than my other ones because past me thought it would be a great idea to set this book in medieval Constantinople because we love research.
Right.
So current me is like, dang it, it's
How
okay.
do you stop yourself from researching too much and writing?
Oh my gosh.
Yes, luckily I figured this out when I was doing steampunk. Okay, you don't get to eat me. The cat's getting very hungry. I'll be right. So I do make this story the priority.
Mhm.
And I will, if I come to a part where I'm stuck, I'll follow the suggestion from Lisa Cron in Story Genius and put brackets with TK in it,
Oh, yeah.
because
Mhm.
TK is a combination of letters you're not going to see in the English language. And that way you can search for it. I also write in Scrivener, and I will keep a
Yeah,
list of things to research. Oh, yeah, love Scrivener.
I love Scrivener myself as well. I couldn't imagine writing it any other way.
Yes,
just
that
do
was
the
actually one
brackets.
of the. Sorry, what?
I just do the brackets too.
Oh, yeah. It makes it so much easier. And yeah, and sometimes I'll just do bracket with questions, so I can go back and find it easily. And so I have writing time, and then I have research time. And I'll also be listening to things. So I've been listening to a book on Byzantium, which has this lovely British narrator. She talks about the Christians. And yeah, it's great.
You gotta watch out for those Christians.
Yes. I've been listening to that while I've been gardening.
Oh, that's
And
It's fun.
yes, and there's just something so nice about doing book research while digging in the dirt, and I think it really does help to get you in a zone. And
Mhm.
I've also got that book in print, so I can go in and highlight passages that I want to
even
go
better.
back and yeah.
Smart. Yeah.
Okay. So you got that going on, and so you have what's the website again for your coaching?
So
Or not your
if
coaching, your yes. Tell us.
okay, so yes. All right, so at the end of the month, I will be doing a free workshop on values-based goal setting for writers. Because, of course, we all procrastinate. We all find reasons for those urgent things to get in the way of the important things like writing. And so if our writing goals are based in our values, which are the principles that we live according to, we are more likely to follow through with them. And that helps us to be fulfilled throughout the entire writing process, not just when you finish the book. So I'll be giving a workshop on this at the end of the month. It will be, I believe it is June 27th at noon Eastern. And if you would like to register to get the link, we've got the link right here. It's bit.ly/valueswriting0624.
Oh, awesome. And we'll include that in the show notes on Spotify or whatever platform that folks are listening to, as well as our YouTube. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
I have one last question.
Mhm.
And I'm sure
Then
the
I'll
other
have one
side.
after him.
Yes. So,
Okay.
well, you go ahead, Hyrum. I've been hogging all.
Oh, mine's the hope one. So you first.
Okay. Well, yeah, basically it's kind of the same thing. But
Oh, good.
if you were to start over, or if you had to, if you were 18 again or 20 again, and you started writing, and what would you do differently? Or what have you
That's a good
learned
one.
in the past 20 years that would really get that thing going faster?
I would probably have stuck with one genre longer rather than doing 3 urban fantasy and then hopping over to steampunk and going back and forth. Because, while there is some crossover in readers, people, some people just really like their werewolves and some people just really like their steampunk. I would have gotten involved with the Georgia romance writers earlier on in my career, because it was through them that I got my book contract and just met some great people and also increased my knowledge base so much. I probably would have taken more writing courses in college, even though that was not my major.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that, those 3 things pretty much.
That's awesome.
And then, well, actually, that begs another question too. What have you learned since moving from traditional to indie and then back again, as far as marketing? What have you learned in that realm?
Oh,
So it's pretty much all the same, whether you're
Yeah.
independently published or traditionally published. And it's, again, finding one thing and sticking to it rather than hopping around and hopping after the next shiny thing, because it's so easy to go after the next shiny thing. Maybe this thing will work. And what I would have done differently would have been to really just invoke my researcher brain and really just gotten much more into the digging into the details and digging into the data and figuring out what worked. And I won't say sooner because I'm still trying to figure out what works, but I think my process would have been a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, especially for those of us who have ADHD, it's hard to stick with things consistently.
Yes. Oh, what is that over there?
Yeah, actually, squirrel.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Hyrum, go ahead.
So I like to ask a question. What is it that you've learned that you think would give other people hope? We'd like to give the authors hope. So where do you find your hope that you think other people should see it too?
I have learned that you never know just how far your books have gone or who is reading them. And some of the most powerful experiences that I've had were when readers came up to me and told me how my books changed their lives, like even my fiction.
Oh, wow.
Like there was one time at Dragon Con when it was actually on an alt history panel that somebody came up and told me that she's like, every time I'm having a hard time in my life and I need to escape, I read the Lycanthropy Files. And I was like, oh, I'm so happy. I'm sorry you've been having a hard time, but I'm glad that you've been reading my books. And so I would say that, whatever you write, there is a reader out there.
Yes,
It's true.
I agree.
It's true. It's amazing
Not just your mother.
Yeah.
And that's
Well.
Mom.
All right, Jen, do you have anything or?
No, but I have loved this conversation. Just kind of hearing someone else's perspective, and that we're all, whether we are indie published or traditionally published, like we're all dealing with the same thing. It just has a different title, and I love that we can all get together and talk about that.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. So, Anne, do you have anything?
Anna?
I'm sorry, Anna. Sorry.
That's okay. It has confused
I do it
people
too, yeah.
my entire life. So I would say, okay, well, you guys have a psychologist captive in your midst. Are there any burning psychology or sleep questions that you've always wanted to ask somebody in our profession?
I've been using a CPAP machine for almost 20 years, so I'm good.
Awesome. Yay. Good patient.
Yeah, you don't want to ask me. I don't.
Let's
I'm in the
just
Stone
say that
Age. I don't
Josh writes about ghosts for a reason.
Yeah. I got plenty in my life, so no, I don't.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but
Okay, so
Well-
this is funny. I want to ask this. Okay, somebody mentioned the other day that I write characters that are far too healthy and emotionally stable, and they said that it was because I am a psychologist, and that is what my
Book one
background
is not. They are not emotionally stable.
But my relationships are very healthy. I refuse to do
Okay,
like the
by the end.
miscommunication stuff. And so everybody has their Have you found it hard to veer away, or are you perfectly comfortable just messing people up in the head?
Oh, I'm perfectly comfortable messing people up in the head.
Nice. I need to
Yeah,
learn.
like-
how to
she
do
shot
that.
people in college.
true.
That's true.
She's
She
okay
went a
doing
little-
that.
she
Yeah,
went
I
farther
shot
than
people
I
in grad
did.
school.
I drew the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like once you get up to PhD level, that's when the sadism really
That's-
comes out.
Gotcha. I didn't go that far for a reason, I guess.
Yes, but I mean, Edward Bailey, who I mentioned before, poor guy, he got his heart broken by a woman who thought he was his brother, who was the Duke, and he fell for her. But then when she figured out he was the younger brother, of course, she dumped him. And so he decided that he was going to make life predictable by living according to scientific principles. And so when we meet him, he is a bit obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I guess popular culture correlate would be kind of like Sheldon from Big Bang Theory light. And it was really fun to torture the poor guy and just make him have to face all of the things that he was avoiding.
That's fair. I like it.
Yeah.
It's therapeutic.
Sometimes.
Exactly.
Kill those in the book, so you don't have to kill people in real life. I mean, that's just that's how I write my books.
I mean, you got to do what you got to do.
I'm still trying to learn from Jen about how to torture characters in romantic situations. That one's still a little hard for me. She's really good at that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Anna, it has been fantastic talking to you this evening. I
really
hope you've
has.
enjoyed your time with us. And
Definitely.
well, awesome. And
Thanks.
those of you that are listening to this now or in the future, be sure to, you can reach out to Anna at, you can go to her website. She has psychupacademy.com. You can find her on Instagram under Psych Up Academy as well. And she's on LinkedIn under on Bartolucci. And like I said, we'll include some of these links in our show notes so you don't have to Google them yourselves. But yeah, no, I think tonight was a fantastic conversation, and we just appreciate you being here.
Yes,
Thank you guys. I enjoyed it so much.
Yay.
All right.
So did the cat.
Yeah, well,
We appreciate it.
we enjoy the cat too. So, all right,
Right.
everyone, thank you so much. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.